SpunOut.ie ventured to Brussels and Strasbourg to find out more about the European Parliament, what it does and how it works. We talked to MEPs, NGOs and European Parliament staff about their thoughts and views on a range of different topics. In this video, we asked about the path a new piece of legislation takes and how it can affect our lives in a real way.
Every year, the President of the Commission, President Juncker, gives the State of the Union speech where he sets out the priorities for the coming year. And then, as a result, the Commission drafts a work programme, which is as a result of the feedback from the Parliament, from Member States and stakeholders, as to what are the priorities for the following year. And from this work programme, individual laws or withdrawals of laws take place over the coming year.
Basically, if you take the normal legislative proposal, the European Commission propose, that's their function, they are the permanent civil servants, they propose the legislation. So in the case of my file, it's called IORPS 2, which is a big fancy name for Institutional Occupational Retirement Pensions, that's what it means. So the Commission proposed the legislation in 2014. The Council, which is made up of the governments of the 28, came to what's called a general approach in December last year in terms of the net issues that they wanted to have remain in the text. And then it came to Parliament. I was selected as the lead rapporteur for the file. I produced my file on the last day of my report on the last day of July. And then what's happening between the 30th of July and the 1st of December is a negotiation in Parliament at our Econ Committee amongst the shadow rapporteurs who have responsibility for the file with me. So last week we had the deadline for the amendments to my file, and over 650 amendments were put forward by the different members of Econ. So we're trying to work through those amendments now to find out, can we get that consensus that I spoke about earlier.
There's no whip in a group in the European Parliament. You would normally find yourself, but not with everything, voting the same way as the group. And you can see on VoteWatch EU, another very important website to go on, the percentage of group loyalty, if you like. It's quite high considering there's no whip. It's something like 90%.
In terms of the voting process, is it compulsory for you to go down and vote on everything?
There's a thing called a roll call vote, which is where you push that button and where it is officially recorded. And then there are, I'd say for every roll call vote, in my experience, it could be contradicted by someone who's been here for longer, but in my experience, for every roll call vote, you also have 10 other votes where you put up your hand to say yes, and then here, if it says for people who voted no or against, you put up your hand again, and then you put up your hand for if you have abstained. And I seriously question whether some people have their hand up at the right time, whether they're putting their hand up when the translator said yes, or whether the speaker actually said no. And on numerous occasions, people have gone, check. Someone goes, I have a feeling that vote wasn't as the chairman called it. It's not the chairman's fault because he's looking at a sea of hands going up and down, and often the vote is overturned. But you have to question, how many times did someone not go check where the vote should have been overturned? And I don't know, it's a flawed process.
Because it takes so long, it's hard to show people the impact. Because I think even a lot of the things when you campaign on them, like for example, the Lisbon Treaty, and while I would have been on the opposition and opposed to Lisbon, and it's passed, that seems like years ago. Well, it is years ago to people. But one of the implications of Lisbon is TTIP. You know, and we have given the European Commission the mandate to go out and negotiate on behalf of all 28 countries. And people might then question, well, how did this happen? And you're like, well, that's the problem with European laws, is that by the time they actually impact on your life, it's too hard. It's too late to change them, and that's hard. So what you're doing is making an impact, but by the time it comes into effect, it's a long way down the road.
I'm doing a lot of work as well on things like the car hire industry. I get lots of complaints from constituents when they're off to Spain for their two weeks package holiday and they take a car or they go independently. They feel a great sense of injustice about the car hire business. So the work that I've done on that has led to a new code of conduct, and in a voluntary way, that the industry are talking about, doing. That's something real, because we need European standards when it comes to the car industry. It's a huge European industry, but it affects consumers. So there's a lot of things that you can actually, niche issues that you can move into On a consumer side, which actually helps people, one of the other issues that we're working on at the moment is the Cross-Border Health Directive. It means if you can't get an operation at home, you're entitled as an EU citizen to get an operation abroad to cut down on the waiting time. So there are a lot of issues outside of the economic side that you can actually use your influence as an MEP to explain to people their basic rights as EU citizens. I was in a class in Dublin recently, and a kid said, I thought he put it very well, very bright kid. He said, are you saying, Mr. Hayes, that effectively we've two bits of rights? We have Irish rights under our constitution, and we have European rights. I said, that's exactly it. Yeah, exactly. We're very lucky to have, as a wider canopy of rights as EU citizens, and people take that for granted. Those who are against Europe, be they Euro-critical or Eurosceptics, right the way across Europe, the rise of nationalism, we see it everywhere, it's in our own country. What they're against is really this extension of rights, European-based rights, to our wider group of people. And I think we've got those of us who are pro-European, who want to see this project work and believe that Ireland's place is in Europe, we have a huge responsibility to continually explain to people what we're trying to achieve for people as extending those basic rights across all member states of the European Union.